Hey, here's another video that your significant other is probably going to hate me for because you're probably going to spend a bunch of money. Because here's some really cool tools that I regret not buying sooner. Item number one is a one-way gauge. That's what this is right here. This weird shaped piece of metal that has a dial indicator in it. And this is not the dial indicator that comes with it. It is the dial indicator that I would, however, recommend. But what this is probably the simplest way for you to calibrate all of your tools. Now, I've said in many videos before that I am absolutely not one of those people that likes to chase absolute perfection to the thousandth of an inch in trying to get my tools dialed in. If there's not a problem, I don't worry about it. If there is a problem, then I go about doing it. But more importantly, the reason why I didn't waste my time doing that is because I can't stand getting the adjustable arms on dial indicators set up. It's just a pain in the butt. And then I found out about this, and this changes everything. It actually makes setting things up so much easier because it's really simple to use. Now, the reason why I went with a digital readout is because the way that my brain functions, I just find it easier to read a digital readout. I know that's not necessarily the case for everybody, but this is a Mitutoyo dial indicator. Very, very good. I'm sure I'm probably saying that wrong, but who cares? But I started to go down this rabbit hole when I got my sliding table saw because I was trying to get my slider to be a certain distance above the surface of the cast iron, but I was also using this to get the run out on my slider. I was also using this to get the run out of my fence. It's so incredibly easy to use. Now, let me show you a real-world example of how this works. I can just take this, place this on my surface, like you see here, go ahead and put it at its origin, and now I can just slide this over and test where my table is in relation to the cast iron. It's really that simple. I could even take this and run it across my cast iron surface and see if I can find high spots and low spots simply by sliding this around, and it'll give me real-time readouts digitally. If I needed to test the runout of my fence, I could place it against the fence here on this flat edge and move it from one end to the other. I can even do the same thing on the slider, and I can test the runout of my slider by clamping this in place, and it gives me real-time readouts. Another way you can use this is by checking how your table on your jointer is in relation to the cutter head itself, or even one of the cutter heads if you have a helical head, and you can make sure that all the way across it's within a certain tolerance from one another by simply using this, and then you can identify whether or not this is coplanar to the outfeed as well. So this would be an example of how you could place it if you were trying to use it on, say, a drill press chuck and trying to find out if there's any runout in your drill press chuck. This is the dial indicator that comes with it. So if this is the kind that you prefer, then obviously you don't need a digital. But what I love about the digital is just the real-time readings, and you can switch this between metric, imperial, whatever you prefer, but I just find this is a lot easier for me to read and understand when I'm looking at it. One thing I will say about this is that it does come with this flat foot, which is really, really great if you are wanting to check, say on a helical head, the relation of the cutter, because it has the small little cutters. This will actually give you the ability to be flat on that cutter, which is nice. But you'll notice that this actually comes out of this dial indicator, and that's another benefit that I really like about this, which, I mean, any dial indicator really, is that you can buy one of these sets of extensions. And so if I was in a scenario where I needed to get a little bit more length, it's really, really simple because I can just thread these extensions on, and that just gives me the ability to reach things further back, and then you would just swap out the tip of this piece, or you could even combine these two if you really needed to get the right distance. So as somebody who hates this process, this is the best investment that I made, and it's made the process a lot easier. Now, the next thing you just saw in the last clip, and that is one of these clamps. This is a Craig Automax clamp is I believe what it's called. And if you're somebody that has a slider, it's really, really, really nice. But more importantly, you can utilize these on all kinds of different work surfaces. But it's just really nice to have something that I can clamp down really quick. Let's say that I wanted to cut, thin strips off of this piece here, and I don't want to necessarily get my hands too close to it. Well, it's really simple. I can just slide this up there, tighten this thing down, and then I can keep my hands off to the side, and I know that that thing is not going to move. And you can even get the larger size and put it on this and have a clamp up at the front as well. Now, in order to use these particular clamps on my particular saw, it does come with a separate base from Craig, but these are actually sold by Ramon Valdez. These are just little blocks that are machined to fit the slot on the Hammer K3. I don't know if it would fit on other ones, but this just goes into that miter track and allows you the ability to clamp it down quickly and easily. Now, this next thing I actually thought was kind of like gimmicky when I first saw it. I was like, I just can't imagine ever having a need for that. And that is one of these Bora Centipede, I believe is what it's called. I ended up opting for one of the taller ones. The reason why I finally decided to get one is I had this big 5-foot by 7-foot conference tabletop with 8-quarter walnut, and I'm like, I need something to set this thing on to get it out of the way of my assembly table because I had 2 of them. So I got one of these, and I'm glad that I got the taller one, which is what this is, simply because I'm a little bit taller. It's easier to work on stuff. They have different sizes, but you just simply pull this thing apart, and it will settle. And now I have a 4x8 surface that I can work on. So what I like to do is I actually use this pretty often when I'm doing finishing in the shop, and I will put this thing out just like this, or I'll do it in my basement where I have even more space. But I can take a 4x8 sheet of plywood, OSB, I can take a piece of foam board insulation, whatever the case is, I can be finishing everything at my assembly table, and I can bring all the things over here to dry. Or if I have a lot of pieces, I have a 4-foot by 8-foot assembly area or spray area. I just cover up my tools, and then I do the same thing over there, and I can just walk around my shop and I can spray everything. And this thing folds up, and it takes up like almost no space whatsoever once you get it folded up. You can just take it, put it up against the wall, it's out of the way. It has a little strap that you can put on it. It's really an excellent thing, and they are not expensive. I mean, they are very reasonably priced. They have different sizes to meet your needs. That is something that I regret big time not getting a long time ago because it has been so helpful when I need it. Now, the next thing is some 2, 3, 4 blocks. And I know what you're thinking. Well, they have 1, 2, 3 blocks, and you're right. But why go 1, 2, 3 when you can go 2, 3, 4? Now, why are these things useful? Well, it's guaranteed accuracy and repeatability. So if you needed to set the cut to 2, 3, 4 inches, 1, 2, 3 if you have a 1, 2, 3 block, if you need to set stops on something to ensure that you have the absolute perfect spacing from the blade, if you're setting up a router table and you need that guaranteed accuracy, those are all awesome examples of how these things come in super handy. And as I'm sure you can imagine, these things are ridiculously accurate. So you know when you need to go use this, it's going to be exact every single time. Now, you just saw me using these to check the accuracy of those, but this would be another thing that I would recommend, and that would be a good set of digital calipers. This is again from the company Mitutoyo. They're great. Got them off Amazon. They're not cheap, but I found that good things never are. I found these things to be incredibly accurate, very good quality. So there's lots of other options out there on the market, of course, that you can get, but these would be the ones that I would recommend. I've had 2 other pairs of digital calipers, very inexpensive ones, and I've found them to not be quite as accurate, and for some reason they just never last as long when it comes to the battery. Now, obviously, digital isn't for everybody, but if you're like me and your brain is not as fast and smart as everybody else's, digital works really well. The next thing I want to talk about is investing in some really good quality, straight flush cut bits. The kind of results that you're going to get from good quality bits like this is so much better than some of the cheaper ones on the market. And with that being said, not to highlight that these are cheaper ones on the market, and these are also not flush cut bits because they don't have a bearing. However, they are 2-flute straight bits, which you would cut dados, grooves, whatever the case is, but they do make these also with bearings to be flush cut. Well, you can see there's just 2 cutters on it right here. And one characteristic that you're going to see between both of these is that they have burning on them, because these just have a tendency to work harder than something like this. Then you can get really cool compression bits like you see here, which is both upcut and downcut. We have upcut bits, we have compression and upcut, downcut, spiral bits, 1/4-inch shank, 1/2-inch shank. There's a lot of different options out there. The ones that I like to use are from Bits, whether they are the previous White Sides versions or now they're Astra-coated HP. You're gonna spend a little bit more money on bits like this, but they're gonna last you so much longer than something like this. In all seriousness, if there was one thing, one tool that you would use regularly in your shop that I would tell you not to skimp on, it would absolutely be router bits, because routers is the one tool that like can get the most dicey, especially when you're using a dull bit. So don't skimp on it. Spend the money, get really good quality bits, and that will make a huge difference for you in your woodworking experience. This is the Wera tiny little socket set. So hear me out. I know you're probably thinking like, big deal, I've got all kinds of stuff like that. What's really great about this, I always saw this every time I went to a store, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying that. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And then one day, I was going through one of my drawers, and I have like 1 billion Allen keys that you just collect over other tools. And every time you want to find something, it's a huge pain in the butt. And so I was like, I'm going to get some of their Allen wrenches because I see everybody posting about how great they are. I'm like, oh, it just must be a fad. Well, I got them, and I'm so glad that I did, because I threw everything else in that drawer away, and now I use those, and it's just simplified everything for me. But then I got one of these little sets here. I mean, look how this is less than the size of my hand. And on this thing, it's genius. Everything, let's see if it'll focus. Literally every single bit that you could possibly need is stored right here in this clever little pack. Then you've got some different socket sizes. I, of course, went with metric because, I'm not a psychopath. But then you have this tiny little screwdriver right here at the top, which is like the size of my pinky. And then you have an attachment here that you can lock in said bits at whatever size. So if you're in really small, tight spaces, guess what? This is perfect. It really comes in handy, believe it or not. It comes in handy way more often than I would have ever imagined. But here's the real kicker, is that it comes with this tiny little socket. And every single one of these bits will work in there, to include the sockets themselves. So if you're looking for something really nice, like you could carry this with you. Let's say you're mobile and you're on a work truck, or you're going and doing installs at people's houses, or you just have a lot of projects that you do around the house, or you decide to start tinkering with your tools and you need to get tools into tight spaces. Well, guess what? This thing right here comes in so incredibly handy. This definitely, I highly recommend. Definitely check it out. If you have ever watched a single one of my cabinet build videos, well, I would say probably on the newer side of cabinet build videos, you're gonna see me using this. This is a narrow crown stapler. The model that I have is the Grex 9032 18 gauge, length 3/8 to 1.25 inches, or 10 to 32 millimeters for those of you that love metric. But why do I have this and why do I use it so much? So this is my preferred way of assembling cabinet boxes for a couple of reasons. One, these have a lot more holding power than a brad nail. Why? Because it's a staple. A lot of people always want to know why I chose Grex. I got their brad nailer a long time ago and loved it, never had a failure, but I can't say that about any other nailer that I've used, like Porter Cable, DeWalt, everything that I've used in the past, I have had some sort of issue that's hooked up to air. I've had some sort of issue at some point. I still haven't had failures with these. They're excellent. This is the model that I have. Again, if you want to see more on how I use this, definitely go check out my Your Overbuilding Cabinets video, and you'll see it a whole bunch. The next item I want to discuss is setup blocks, and I feel like these are like one of the most underrated things in woodworking, and that is these setup blocks. I find myself reaching for these things way more frequently than I ever thought I would. They're great for checking bit height, blade height, setting the blade a certain distance, checking the width of a groove, a dado, thickness of something. I mean, they just have so many uses. And these two sets from iGaging, this is the Imperial and this is the metric set, are far less than some of the other options. Matter of fact, I think Woodpeckers makes a set, they're red of course, but you maybe get about that many or that many. And it's like more than the cost of buying both of these sets together. And then, you know, like most people aren't psychopaths and use both metric and imperial, you could probably get away with just one. But if you don't have a set of these, definitely check them out. They are very worth it, and you will definitely find reasons to use them. The next item is one of the coolest tools that I think has been created. And it's kind of simple, but that is the Grabo. Now, I dragged my feet on getting one of these for a very, very long time. Why? Because I was like, I already have a Gorilla Gripper. And that Gorilla Gripper does everything that I need it to do. Well, boy was I mistaken, because this right here, this is a vacuum clamp that you hold. It's battery operated, it's unbelievable, has an on and off switch. You turn it on, you turn it off, and you can release the suction pressing that red button, right? It has a gauge on it right here. Now, there are two models of this, and I don't have the other model. The other one's like a digital readout, and from what I understand, apparently it fluctuates the pressure based on what's happening to make sure that you never lose suction. I've never lost suction with this on most materials. On some materials, I've turned it off, and some materials you have to leave it on. Some you can actually turn it off and it'll maintain pressure. It just depends on how porous the material is. But there are so many things that you could use this for. If you're doing tile work, if you're doing concrete work, like concrete blocks and stuff, if you're a woodworker and you're moving big sheets of plywood, not just downloading them off of your vehicle, but placing them in the shop, moving them around to get other materials, lifting an entire sheet of plywood up onto your work surface, which is probably tall. It really makes doing all of that a lot easier. And if I'm being honest, I actually want a second one. What I think I'm actually going to do is buy the other one, and then I can use both of those and I can do a comparison on which one. But this one's a little bit less expensive, worth every single penny. I'm so glad that I bought it. I love taking this with me when I go to a hardwood dealer, a plywood supplier, move the stuff around. I've been asked multiple times what it is. It's really, really great. And the battery actually lasts on it a very long time. So 100%. If you have a Gorilla Gripper and it drives you nuts, definitely get one of these. Even if you don't have a Gorilla Gripper but you hate moving plywood around, definitely get one of these. It will totally change everything for you, and it'll take all of the stress out of moving these big sheet goods around your shop. Pretty much every one of us probably has air scrubber or an air filtration unit in our shop. Mine is just above me right here, and I use the Powermatic, which that's not what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about a particular air scrubber, although the Powermatic is the nicest one that I've used so far. What I want to talk about is, do we ever really use them? And I feel like when I used to have mine, I very rarely used it because I'm a content creator, and when I turn it on, it's super loud. So I was just like, this is a huge pain in the butt. I'd turn it on, and then I would forget that I have it on, and I would leave it on, and it would run overnight, and all these different things. It just wasn't convenient. Well, what if there was a way that we could make that thing work on its own based on the levels of particulate in the air? Well, you can, and the way you do that is through this device right here and this device right here. Now, this is from Grit Automation, and I did an entire video talking about this system, and I don't want to highlight the blast gate and all of that stuff because there's a lot of different benefits to this system. If you want to find out more, go watch that video. What I can tell you is that since I put this system in my shop, it has made working and moving from tool to tool and dust collection just a million times better. But most importantly, is it has completely changed how I go about using a air filtration system. So what this does is I can go in the app and I can set it to whatever particulate level I want, right? If it's 2.5 or whatever, and when the air quality in this room exceeds that, it picks it up in this sensor, which there's a slot on the side where it's filtering air in to make sure that the air quality stays within a certain amount, it will turn on your machine automatically until it gets back down below the level in which you set. So at all times, your air can be nice and clean. Now, I know some of you are going to be like, well, yeah, it's great, but then I have to buy this whole system and I don't need blast gates and all this other stuff. You don't, right? You can just use the hub, which is what controls this. This plugs into your fan, and that could be your entire system if you wanted. If you only wanted to add one thing, even though there's so many other benefits to this system, you could just add this, and then you would be using your air filtration system much, much more. Now, where I found it really, really nice is, one, you can program it to a particular tool if you have your other tools set up on the system. So for instance, when I turn on my table saw, it opens that blast gate, it also turns on that fan, and I wanted that because this produces fine dust, and it just happens to be right underneath the air filtration system. So anytime that I'm using that, it will run and try to get ahead on cleaning that air. Another thing that has been really, really nice is anytime I'm spraying any sort of finish in here, it will actually sense that I am spraying some sort of finish, and it is changing the particulate within the air, so it will automatically come on, and it does a very good job of filtering that air out. Now, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna back this camera away, and I want to be able to capture the fan itself, and then I'm gonna go to the sensor. I'm just gonna clap some sawdust on my hands right next to it, and you'll be able to see how this thing will automatically turn on, and I'll even put another little snippet on the side where it will actually show how the air quality changes in real time, and then it kicks on. Now, this will probably take about 10 to 15 seconds for it to kick on, but I wanna do this in real time because I don't want you to think that I'm like manipulating the camera or I'm using my phone to turn it on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stand right underneath it, and hopefully here in just a moment, it'll kick on and you should be able to see it. You may be able to hear it as well since I'm standing underneath it, because it will make a little click noise and then it'll turn on. But what's happening right now, and you're probably seeing, is you can see the particulate level on the app skyrockets way up. And when that there we go, it's on. The fan is on. When that happens, it will turn on the fan, and this is now gonna run until the air particulate level comes back down. So very cool system, very cool thing that you can add to your shop. And again, like I said, if you're gonna go that route and just automate your air filtration system, it would be significantly less expensive than going all blast gates like I did. I mean, I did everything, and it's awesome. I'm telling you, it is fantastic, totally worth it. But definitely check out Grit Automation if this is something that interests you. Let's move on to the next thing. So the next item I want to talk about is a straight edge. This is from UJK. I've talked about this in the past. There's obviously a lot of very good reasons on why a straight edge is so beneficial in the shop, but I feel like this is a tool that most people don't put a lot of priority on. But you really should. And I think one of the reasons is because if you go online and you look, there are a lot of very expensive straight edges, very expensive. Now, the reason why they get so expensive is the material they're made of and the tolerances. So this is aluminum. This is, again, UJK, and this doesn't cost very much. I want to say it's like $40 or $50 if I remember correctly. And if this isn't within the tolerances that you need for flatness, then that's a whole nother story. I think a lot of people get like wrapped around the axle about, this is not machined within 5/1000ths of an inch or something crazy, right? But I mean, really, who needs that? This has a ton of uses for me in my shop, from setting up tools to checking to make sure that things are flat, like a tabletop glue up, which I have a whole nother video talking about how I actually use a straight edge to ensure that I'm not applying too much clamping pressure. Definitely go check out that video if you want to learn more. But a straight edge, UJK, inexpensive, and it is perfectly straight enough. It looks straight, so it's probably straight. Next thing I want to talk about is a cordless router, and I want to bring this up specifically because this was a huge mistake that I made, and I should have known better, and I should have just got this one to begin with. But it's the DeWalt cordless router. Now, I know you might be saying, like, look, I'm already on a battery platform for, Milwaukee or Makita or whatever. don't let that be the determining factor all of the time. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. I actually went with the Makita because it was a lot less expensive and people had said that it was pretty good. But I already have the corded DeWalt, and I know that I love the corded DeWalt. And the reason why I didn't get the cordless is because of the increase in cost at the time, because I had to buy this and then I had to buy a battery, which means I had to buy the charger. And every once in a while you can find good deals where it's packaged together. But I struggled for a little while. I don't know if it was a supply and demand issue or what, but everything about this router I like better than the Makita. From the bonus of the added size of the base. I like the shape of this base. I find it very useful on my corded. So why would I not translate that into my cordless? I like how it has a little bit of heft to it, especially when you put on that 5 amp hour battery. I just find that it's very easy to control going around turns. It's not too flimsy and you have a lot more support. None of those things really matter. The thing that I really like the most is the adjustability of this. It's this turn wheel and it goes up and down based on the direction that you are turning that wheel. Now, why is that so great? Well, with the Makita, you undo a clamp, and the minute you undo that clamp, that thing just wants to fall off or fall back down. It's a really big pain in the butt. This I can turn, and I can be looking. Matter of fact, I can be using one of those setup blocks I just showed you, and I can be making sure that it's flush, that it's the right height, whatever the case is, and then I can lock it down, and I know it's not going to change just because I moved my hand. So the adjustability on the DeWalt is by far the best that I have ever used. I just absolutely love it. And then the other thing that's really cool, which you tend to find a lot more on cordless tools, is how quickly it stops. So let's turn it on. It stopped. It's not spinning anymore. That's a really nice feature. I know there's other routers out there that have that immediate stop. I don't know if I would want to be without that now. So take it with a grain of salt. All I'm going to say is that this is a fantastic cordless trim router. I'll just give everybody a warning now. I'm going to start talking about a few things that are on the more expensive side. So just brace yourself, or if that offends you, please move on. But I would be remiss if I did not mention some of my favorite tools of 2023 and some of my biggest recommendations. Not everything I have left, but the next two things. Biggest recommendations that I would tell you to save for. And I say save for because they are more expensive. The first is the Graco Ultimate Quickshot. I have the Ultimate Quickshot. I have a video talking about this, spraying, testing finishes. Yes, you can shoot clear coats, you can shoot paints. I've done both. I've gotten fantastic results. I hate finishing. Hate finishing. I especially hate spraying. And this has completely changed that for me. I hate spraying so much that for the longest time I just defaulted to using Rubio Monocoat on my furniture pieces. But then I got, in situations where I can't use Rubio Monocoat, right? I'm building cabinetry and it's for a kitchen or whatever, and I'm not going to use Rubio Monocoat. That's a whole other conversation. People are going to be like, why wouldn't you use Rubio Monocoat? Because I want something more durable for that situation. So I started spraying clear coats out of this. Man, it's so great. It's such a good system. It's expensive. It costs like $1,350. When I bought it, I got it for $1,200. I went to a demo at a local Sherwin-Williams. The Ultimate Quickshot is the Sherwin-Williams exclusive. They also have the Ultra Quickshot, which you can buy on the regular market. They're exactly the same thing. But when I got mine, it was like $1,250, and I got a coupon for 3 extra tips. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If there's one thing since I've been woodworking that I don't regret spending my money on when it comes to finishing, 100%, it is this. I don't care if the pump, I use it so much and the pump goes out and I got to replace the pump for a couple $100. The ease of use of this system and the ease of cleaning and the results that I'm getting far outweigh the cost for me. So I don't know if you could tell, but I really, really like this. If you can go to a local demo, just go try it out. what really makes it special is the electronics that are in the gun. So a lot of people say, like, what's the difference between this and the X5 and all these other things? Well, one, it's a small, tiny, compact unit, not something you have to like stick into a gallon of paint or a 5-gallon bucket. But a lot of people will ask, well, what about the, Graco DSP or the small handheld one that has like the cup? Not the same, right? Because it doesn't have the same technology. I don't know what they did with this gun, but boy, it works really freaking good. So if you've been on the fence about it, go watch my videos that I've done about this. It's phenomenal. You won't regret it. I've talked to so many people that have watched my video and have bought this, and all of them have written me and said, wow, this is great. Why did I wait so long? Asking me, what tips are you using? What spray settings do you recommend? It's fantastic. Okay, I've said enough. Let's move on. Okay, this one's really gonna ruffle some feathers, and that is the Lamelo P2. Now, let me tell you some backstory to this. So I purchased this at the end of 2022, mainly for tax reasons, right? It was something that I could write off at the end of the year. And I've been curious about using one for a while because I saw some people using it. Not a lot. Saw some people using it. I was like, yeah, it could be helpful. So I put it in my shop, and it literally sat in the sustainer for 7 months before I ever took it out. And I was like, why did I buy this? I even talked about it on my social media saying this was probably a mistake to buy this. I will likely be getting rid of it. Pulled it out one day, messed with it, tried a couple of the joints. Was just like, okay, cool. Fast forward to when I was doing a built-in project for my own house. I said, you know what? I am going to force myself to find reasons to use this tool. And let me tell you, I am so glad that I did, because I think this is one of the coolest tools, and I haven't even begun to scratch the surface on it yet, right? I use the Tenso connectors. What are they good for? Well, things like adding base molding, adding in scribed filler strips, snapping face frames on cabinets. I don't have that application because I don't really make a lot of cabinets with face frames. Putting edging on a top, using it to create cool features like slat walls. I mean, there are just so many different things that you can use this tool for, and it is really opening my eyes. They have all these different connectors, the Clamex connectors, which make knockdown furniture really, really possible and sturdy. It's just a really remarkable tool. And the other thing is, too, I got mine and also purchased the biscuit cutter as well. So it's a different blade, right? Because the Lamelo, when you put that blade in, it has this little plunge feature and it shoots it up and down. So the slot is cut and the different pieces. I'm not doing a really good job explaining how this works, showing some B-roll of how it goes in and out is probably a better option, but you guys get the idea. Here would be my recommendation, right? If you're somebody that does a lot of cabinetry work, especially if you dabble with face frames, you're doing installs. I mean, that's where it really shines. You're doing installs. You want to do flat pack options that you make small products and you mail them out. Definitely look at one of these. 100%. It is a really, really great tool, and I can't wait. I need to do a video on this thing, which I will here soon. Now, to address the elephant in the room, because I get this question a lot, they all want to know about the power cord, because this is a Festool plug-it cord. You can't buy these, right, anymore. They're discontinued. I got really lucky and found one on eBay, and it just works, because that was also the thing that I didn't love about this, because they do make this cordless as well. I forgot to mention that. One thing I did not love about this was having to plug it in separately from the dust extractor. I got super lucky. Matter of fact, one of my followers or people over on Instagram sent me a message. They found one on eBay when I was talking about it, because I almost sold this to get the cordless, and I immediately went and bid, and of course I won. And boom, here we go. Now I've got the Festool plug-it cord. I will say it probably voided my warranty through Lamelo, but I don't care. It's totally worth it. All right, moving on. All right, so next I'm going to highlight a couple of clamping options, clamping solutions. I get asked this a lot. I use Bessie's parallel clamps, this style of clamp in general, for almost everything. Like this is the style that I gravitate towards. Here's the problem. They are on the more expensive side when you look at things like some of the trigger clamps or pipe clamps as an option and everything else. But I think it's because people have the misconception that you have to get all of the different sizes. It can be overwhelming. So for me, I have 2 different sizes of Bessey clamps, and I want to say I have 8 of each one. These are the 32 inch, 33 inch, something like that. And then the other ones are 50 inch. For the longest time I used them and didn't know that this existed. This is an extender, and don't quote me on this, but I think that this actually might be compatible with other parallel clamp brands as well. You would have to look because it does have a shaped groove that kind of matches this, but I'm pretty sure all the bars for most of these are fairly similar. But what you can do with this is you can actually take this and put 2 of these together and extend the length. So there are many times where I didn't have enough clamps, or I had a very odd length that was just outside of the capabilities of one, and it was way less than one of the larger ones. These solve that problem. They solve that problem. It does not affect the amount of clamping pressure that I'm able to get. It is very sturdy. It sits at the same height on the table. It actually gives you an additional place for support, depending on where it is connected. But it's really easy to install. You just take off these 2 screws here. You take them out, you slide one clamp in from one direction, you slide the other clamp in from the other direction, put the bolts back in, and now you have a much longer clamp. So if you have parallel clamps, specifically Bessey, but again, like I said, I'm pretty sure that these will work with some of the other brands, I would definitely recommend picking up a couple of sets of these and giving yourself a lot more capacity. So the next item is also a Bessey clamp. These are the self-adjusting toggle clamps, I believe is what they are. But it's combined with a dog that you can get from TSO Products, and it locks in place. And how this works is these go into your tabletop surface. So there's a lot of uses for these style of clamps. These are great when you're doing repetitive work where you need to, let's say you're dominoing a bunch of panels or a bunch of slats or something, and you need the same thing over and over again. You don't want to fuss with, clamping and reclamping. These clamp down super fast. Now, if you look at it here, it's nice and loose, but what happens if I go ahead and tighten this down, what it does is it pulls it down to the table and it locks it in place so it can't go anywhere. I still have the ability to turn it, but this right here, the way that this is designed is that when this goes into the dog hole, it is perfectly flush. When you start turning that screw, it turns this nut here, and now it has a lip, and that lip catches underneath the MFT or the work surface, whatever you're using, and it solidifies it and puts it in place. What's really cool is that when you're done with it, you can simply loosen it, and then you pull it right back out because it automatically retracts to the original position. So this style of clamp is extremely helpful, and then the fact that I can lock them down and just make repeat cuts or repeat plunges or whatever the case is over and over again really quick, clamp it in place, have a really strong connection. It's really great. It's awesome. It's like a little mini hold fast. Well, kind of, not really. It's not really like that, but kind of if you have an MFT. It's like an MFT hold fast. These next 2 things will be pretty fast. I'm always asked which laser do I use and which laser range finder, laser measurer device do I use. Both of them are Bosch. The one that I'm using here is called the Blaze GLM42. This is great. You can go between all kinds of different units of measurement. It works very, very well. It even has customized tape on the back because my son used to come out here and play with it and he broke it. But anyways, it still works great. It's very easy to use. I use this anytime I'm doing a built-in for the house. I'm trying to get very accurate measurements. When I'm doing baseboards, actually, believe it or not, go around, use this. It's very, very simple. You can store things in here. Works really good. Now for the laser, I've had a couple of different ones. I like this one better than the other one I have. The other one I have is also Bosch. This is the GLL50-40G. Green laser, works very well, dual line laser, and it does project, I guess is the word, all the way around the room, which is really, really nice. So trying to level cabinets, trying to level toe kicks, hanging things on the wall, ensuring something is square. Lots of uses, if not just for cabinetry related stuff. Marking studs on a wall, so you can later put things into it when it's covering the wall. Also a really good use for it. This is the kind of thing that I feel like every homeowner, not just woodworker. I mean, I've used this in the shop. I've used this to install cabinets in my shop. I've used it to do the lighting in my shop to make sure that I had a perfectly straight line all the way down. I mean, there's so many different uses for it, but I just feel like every homeowner and woodworker needs to have a good laser. I'm sure most of you are surprised that I've made it this far into the video and haven't been shoving Festool down your throat. Wait a minute. I did talk about the bits. So this is not the first Festool item in this video. However, this is really cool. So again, I hate sanding. I hate finishing. I hate trying out 50 different sanding blocks and having all of these different grits that I don't know because it's not written on the dang thing. It really drives me nuts. I don't like how things slip out of my hands very easily. So I've always been looking for good sanding sponges that interface with the sandpaper that I already use. Guess what? Here it is. So this is a sanding block sustainer. You don't have to buy the sustainer. You can get all three of these with the sustainer. It's like 90 bucks or something. You can just buy the blocks, but I wanted to show because I bought it in the sustainer when I was at Hartville Tool. But here's what I love about it. So I use the 3M Cubitron, specifically the 775L. That's what I use the most. The 710W is the one that has the mesh and the crazy pattern. I don't use that as much. This is my absolute favorite, best sandpaper ever. But here's what's great about it. So I primarily use 6-inch. This is more of a square pad, which you can also use your existing sandpaper. It's just hook and loop, so no issues of it attaching. But I can take my 150 millimeter or 6-inch sandpaper and I can use this not only on my sanders, but I can also use it for the finish sanding on these sponges. They have these 3 holes located in them right here. They're really easy to carry. This is a soft pad. This is a hard pad. Again, this is more of a rectangular style, but they make it super easy. This is like the kind of thing that you wouldn't think you would get that much use out of or you wouldn't get very excited about. And I dragged my feet on buying them for a long time, but one of these came with my Festool Conturo, and I use it every time I do edge banding. I'm like, oh, I really like this pad, because this one's shaped a little bit differently, so it fits in your palm really, really nicely. But that's how I soften edges of the edge banded cabinets, is using one of these. Works fantastic. But now that I have these, I actually find myself going back and sanding more by hand, because I feel like I get better results. I can control this very well. I'm not buying new sandpaper. They're just really great. So you can buy these individually. You can buy them as a set. I would 100% recommend trying these out, especially if you're somebody that's using 6-inch paper. Look at that. It sticks to it great. It does not come off. It's just wonderful. So I'm really liking this when I'm sanding in between coats on finishes. I'll take the hard pad and put like 320 or 220 on there, and I'll knock down all the nibs, and it works really, really, really well. So there you go. And I'm sure I'm going to get the people in the comments that are like, $90 for 3 pads. Well, I hate sanding, so I would have spent $400 on this damn thing. All right, we're getting close to the end. These next things, they are on the more expensive side, but quality usually is. And that is finding like the end-all be-all brad point bit set, right? If there's one drill bit that I use more than anything, it's always been a brad point bit. Maybe that's not the case for you. However, I've gone through a lot of different sets that I didn't love. They've rusted, they look like crap, they're dull very quickly. I came across these. These are FAMAG, however you want to pronounce it. It's a German company, I believe. These things are crazy. This is a 25-piece set, high quality steel, and they come in this nice cool container that you see here. And this one is a metric set. So this is a 1 millimeter all the way up to 13 millimeters with different like 0.5 millimeter increments along the way. These are very, very good at what they do. They cut a exceptionally clean hole. And at this point, like this is like the end all be all set for me. Like I don't see myself ever needing another set in the future. Now, how did I find out about these? I found out about these because they also make Forstner bits, and this was the first set of Forstner bits, not the first set that I bought ever, because that's definitely not true. I've got like some, you know, Rockler set and a Ryobi set and all the cheap ones that you can get from Lowe's and Home Depot. I've had all kinds of different kinds, right? But these things, I have a video talking about these. I was so shocked and impressed with these that I started to look at what else they had. Come to find out, they have Brad Point bit sets. These are the Bormax. This is a 6-piece set, metric. The one that I use the most here is the 35 millimeter for the you know, hinges and such. But then I also have a much larger set, and this is the Imperial set. What is really fascinating about these bits is the type of chip that they produce. So you know with normal like Forstner bits, you get these like really, really big shavings. That is not the case with these. They produce these tiny little shavings because they're all broken up as they start to eject. It's really, really cool. But man, just if you're looking for really good quality, like buy once, cry once, that whole mentality, then I would 100% point you in this direction. And I know there's going to be people in the comments section that say, oh, you need to try fish, or fish are great. They are. And I'm not saying that these are better than those. All I'm saying is that my experience with these has been absolutely phenomenal, and I can't imagine why I would ever need to switch from these to the others. That's actually not a bad idea for a YouTube video. Testing the quality between the highest rated bits. I probably shouldn't have said that. Now someone's going to steal the idea. All right, that's all I got. See you next time. I think every woodworker probably has a drawer or multiple drawers or bins that look something like this. This is where, you know, spare bolts that I have on projects that I didn't use just kind of get tossed into. Well, it's handy to have that because there's times where I need those. The problem is that I'm always searching to figure out what size something is. So that's where these come into play. And they're extremely, extremely helpful. You can get them at like any home store. You can get them off Amazon. They cost hardly anything. And when you need them, they're fantastic. And so, you know, if I'm trying to figure out the size of this bolt, I already know it, but it's a 3/8 16. So now if I go to the local home store, I know that I'm looking, if let's say I need 10 of these and I only have one, I need to go look for, you know, 9 more 3/8 16. It's kind of like the thing that they have on display at a home store, but now I can do it from the house, get everything I need to know, and then go to the store and buy it, not waste any more time. Same thing applies, you know, if you need to find out what size the nut that you have is, you can do that on the opposite side. So that's really, really helpful. And again, you can buy these in both metric and imperial. So if I know I need one of these bolts, M8 1.25, I know that that's the size that I need, and that's what I'm looking for when I go to the home store. And I just keep these hung up on the wall. I'm telling you, when you need these things, you're so glad that you had them, and it's a great thing to have laying around for so many reasons. So if you've been following my channel or my content for any, you know, given amount of time, you'll know that I enjoy wearing one of these leather aprons. This one's from Leather by Dragonfly. I've had a couple of different ones. My son even has one, but he hasn't worn it yet because he's not out in the shop building with me just yet. The benefits to having an apron is obviously you can have the stuff on you at all times. Well, not everybody wants to wear an apron. And it's actually funny because I love wearing the apron. It has a lot of advantages. I tend to actually wear the apron during the hotter times of the month because I'm normally wearing shorts and, You know, it keeps stuff off of my clothes, you know, my t-shirts, all that kind of stuff. Well, in the wintertime, I have a tendency, obviously, to wear pants and hoodies and jackets and stuff like that. So I don't like changing the clothes. So I actually wear this when it's warmer. And what I want to talk to you guys about is this item right here. This is known as the Sedgley, and yes, it is named after Mr. Brian Sedgley of Sedge Tool, otherwise known as Festival Sedge. And what this is this is just a pouch that you hang on your belt. So I'm going to bring you in closer to show you kind of what the benefits are, in my opinion, to having one of these. Now, instead of wearing the apron when I'm out in the shop, I'll just throw this on my side and keep all of my tools on me that I'm using on a regular basis. And it's just really nice because I can just continuously pull the things out of this. Now, granted, it is not the apron and it doesn't have the same properties and, you know, safety benefits and the ability to carry more things as the apron does. But when you don't want to wear an apron, but you want to keep those things on you, it's a really good solution. So let me bring you in closer and show you all the things that I keep in mind. So the first thing that I'll highlight is that it comes with one of these metal clips, right? And it's a very strong clip right here. So that's what actually clips onto the belt. In the front, it has multiple pouches around the outside. Now, this is not something that you can customize. This is just, you're going to buy it exactly like this and put the things that you want in it. But for me, I like to keep the various marking items that I use, right? I have different sizes and different colors for different things. I keep my Polini in there. I keep a hex over here on the magnet because there's a magnet here. This is the hex I use the majority for the majority of my tools, so I like to have it on me. There's another magnet here. They're very strong magnets. And then in here, I've got my Incra Tiny T. I keep a knife on me in there. I keep my dust collection remote in there when I'm not actually working. Normally, I'll just clip this onto my pants, but now I know it's always here. I have a small little square, and I've got my carbide scraper that I use for edge banding and other very small, tiny things. But those are all of the items that I keep inside of mine. And so I can get by with these things for the majority of the things that I build, and everything else that I need is usually within arm's reach. So really, really nice to have. This would be a great gift for somebody who maybe doesn't want to commit to an apron, but likes the idea of having their things on them and not just stuffed in their pockets. For some reason, I always get asked, you know, what tape measure do I like and do I use? You know, I've talked about these before. I like the Fastcap tape measures. I mean, that's pretty much the only ones I have at this point. I've used some other ones. These ones are just always accurate. They always match up with one another, which is always a big concern with tape measures. I'm not concerned about, you know, this one and this one being the same when I pull them out, right? Because I know they are. I've checked them. And unless I ever see a problem, it's never going to be a concern for me. But the two that I use exclusively are the yellow and the blue, right? And so Fastcap has all their tape measures colored, and each color does something different. So this yellow one is both metric and imperial. It's metric on one side, imperial on the other. And this one right here is called the True 32, and that is only metric. It is metric, exactly the same on both sides of the tape. For those of you that don't know that I like to primarily use metric, that's why I have these, because when I'm doing cabinetry, this is the only tape measure that I will use. These tape measures, like any others, you know, they have some great features. I can write on this if I need to write a quick measurement and it comes right off. They have a nice rubberized housing. I've dropped these multiple times and they still work just fine. I'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a minute. They do come with belt clips, which is nice. Some of them I have the belt clip on, some I don't. If I ever put one of these in my Sedgley pouch that I just showed you, I usually take the belt clip off. Otherwise, I'll clip it next to the Sedgley. They do come with pencil sharpeners, which a long time ago used to be beneficial for me. Now it's not, because I like to use other things to mark up my material, which don't require sharpeners. And they obviously have the locks, which work very well, especially over long term. Now, I say long term because the thing I wanted to mention is, so this is the very first one I bought a little over 4 years ago, I'd say. And this tape measure still works. I know somebody's going to freak out that I just let that thing snap back into the into the tape, but I don't care. It's my tape measure. I just want to highlight how I've had this for a very long time. I've dropped it more times than I can even count, and everything still works on it just fine. These things are not expensive. They will last a very long time. These are the ones that I like, and I just order them either directly on Fastcap, or I go buy them at Woodcraft, or I buy them off Amazon. They're everywhere. They're very easy to find. They're very good tape measure. So if you're looking for a tape measure that you just want to be consistent throughout your shop, Fastcap would be the ones that I would go with. The next item I want to talk about is actually in the background right now of this video, and I did this on purpose because this next item is something that I get asked about all the time, and I'm never doing a video about that thing. And the other thing that really surprised me about that, if you just did a quick Google search, you would definitely find those. It is another item that is sold by Fastcap, and that is the guide rail holder. Now, where you will commonly see these used is on a garage door, and it's kind of a genius design, and there's plenty of other people that 3D print things like these now because they've become so popular, but these are used to mount to a garage door so you can utilize the space of a garage door. Normally, you wouldn't be able to do that. As you see behind me, it's not just limited to a garage door. You can also mount it directly to a wall. That's the wall that I built in front of my garage door. Had I not built that wall, absolutely I would have used those on the garage door itself. So it's kind of nice. You can either put it on the garage door or you can just put it on a regular wall. But the way that these operate is they have a groove at the top, and they have this little piece here that turns like that. And you put your guide rail in it, just like you see it right there. And it works perfectly. It just keeps it nice and in place. And the benefit to that is that if you put it on your garage door, as you raise the garage door up and it sits like this, it can't fall out because it's held on both sides. So pretty smart design and a really good way to utilize some space that normally you might not be able to utilize. And I couldn't say for sure. I would assume that they will fit other tracks or they sell them for other tracks. I just used the Festool ones. So, take a look at their website. Maybe if you have a Craig, if you have a Triton, if you have a Makita, if you have all the different brands, they might make them that fit that specifically, or maybe they already fit. I don't know. I just have the one. The next item is actually something that I truly regret not putting in my previous shop. I'll talk about that here in a minute. I just want to highlight a couple of key features so you're not sitting here staring at this while I talk about my experiences so far. The first thing is that it swivels. The total length is 50 feet. The brand is Flexzilla. Obviously, it's got a great color. Inside joke there. And it extends and retracts very well. It locks into place very well. And it doesn't take up a big space, right? It's got a very small form factor compared to what I previously had. So let's talk about that. In my previous shop, I was thinking about getting this one, and I asked some people that owned them, and I read a bunch of reviews and took a look at a bunch of forums and stuff that talked about this one specifically. And it was a very mixed bag of reviews, which is why I decided not to get it. So what did I end up doing? Well, I ended up spending a bunch of money on a really big one that I absolutely did not need, and I actually didn't love it. I gave it away when I moved. Not that there was anything wrong with it. It was just way more than I ever needed. It was like 100 feet or 150 feet. It was super heavy duty. The only thing I have hooked up to it is a small air compressor, like most people's shops, right? And I decided to finally go back and buy this one. So I've had this one since March or April, whenever I moved in here. And I use it fairly often, but to be honest, I'm probably like most other shops, and the only thing I use an air compressor for is to blow off dust, which I just talked about I don't love doing, and use it for my nailers. And that's it. That's the only thing I use the air compressor for, which is why I don't have a massively huge air compressor, and I don't need really more than 50 feet. Matter of fact, 50 feet will still make it from this corner all the way out and let me fill up my tires on my car if I needed to. So my experience so far with this has been great. It's more than I need. It was far less expensive than the one that I bought, that's for sure. And so far it's working just fine. It pulls out way easier actually than my previous one did, and it retracts very nicely whether there's air in it or not in it. And of course, time will tell if it really lasts lots of use. But again, I think I'm way more comparable to most other hobbyist woodworkers in their garage that are only using it for those two things. Therefore, it doesn't get used all that much. So I think that this is going to last a very long time. But I wanted to share that one because a lot of people ask me questions about which hose reel that I use, because I just think it's a standard thing that most people want in their shop. And I would say that it's probably one of the more popular ones on the market. All right, so I'm going to end this video with my favorite new thing in the shop, and it's silly because it's such a simple thing, but holy cow, has it made my life a lot easier. This is a product that is specific to people who have an MFT or some other MFT style table that has a 20 millimeter bench dog hole in the top of it. With that being said, I will say that I don't know off the top of my head if they make this with a 3/4 inch, because I know a lot of tables have 3/4 inch holes. I'm not sure. I have the 20. But what this is, and I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see here in just a minute. This is a product made by UJK. What this is you chuck this up in your drill, and it does two things at the same time. One, it will clean out the dog hole, which I'll tell you here in a moment why that's important. And two, it will put a tiny chamfer on the dog hole. Now, let me bring you in close so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so the first thing that I want to point out is that it has a removable and adjustable carbide cutter, much like you'd find on a helical head. And that cutter is at an angle, and that cutter is what does the chamfered edge. I'm going to show you how this thing works here in just a second. I don't know why this is such a simple thing, and I absolutely love it. And there's one key feature, and that key feature over the fact that it chamfers the dog hole. And you might be asking, what do you need a chamfered hole for? I'll show you that here in a minute. But more importantly, what I love is these. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 slots here. And what these do is the tolerance is extremely tight. These will actually cut and clean out the inside of the dog hole. And for me, on my work surface, that is incredibly, incredibly important. So not only is it cleaning that out and getting a nice smooth finish on the inside, getting rid of glue, but it's also doing the chamfer. Now, let me show you how this thing works. So the bit just goes into your standard chuck, right? It just has a hex shank and it goes in there. But I wanted to bring you in close to show you. So this hole right here has drips of glue from when I've done glue ups. So if I tried to take a bench dog like this one here and put it down in there, it's very difficult to get it in. It's also very difficult to get it out because that glue damages it. Same thing with this one. Theoretically, this bench dog should be very easy to push in, kind of like that one. So how do we fix that? I don't want to sit there and I don't want to try to pick out the glue. Well, that's where this is so awesome. So as I start to turn this, those ridges on the side are actually cleaning that out. So let's go full speed. Let's do this one too. Now, this bench dog should slide right in. Right? So now I don't have that issue anymore. And believe me, on my assembly table, that kind of stuff happens constantly because it's directly under the glue up. But that's not the best part about it. Before I had mentioned, it gives a nice little chamfered edge. Well, why is that important? Well, one, you don't have those sharp edges anymore. But let's say I was going to use a bench dog like this, which is called a chamfer dog, right? What it has on it is a chamfered collar that is very small to stop it from going in to the table. What's the benefit of that? The benefit of that is that I'm still referencing the 20 millimeter hole pattern because that is the size of this. That tiny little collar in that chamfered edge is what's stopping it from going through the table. Now, it's also a benefit to stuff like this, which is also a chamfer dog, but now it is flush to the surface. And as you can see here at the top, these dogs have a threaded hole. These dogs are made by TSO products. TSO is pretty much the only bench dogs that I use at this point for a variety of reasons, but I'm just using them here to show you the benefit. To me, this is incredibly important in my table, to include this, to include the taller versions, because there's a lot of times where I am referencing the actual 20 millimeter pattern. The other thing that you could do, it would be expensive, but you could buy a whole bunch of these and place these in your the top of your work surface and actually stop things from falling through, and also be able to attach jigs and stuff to it.
if you wanted to. So again, just to benefit, this new reaming tool, I believe that's what it's called, by UJK. It's pretty awesome if you have an MFT style, bench or setup, and you're looking for something to solve those issues. Could you use a router bit? Sure, you could in a trim router. However, it would not solve the problem of the glue on the inside because of these ridges here. So this, as simple as it is, has been invaluable to me and my assembly table. Getting a good set of tongue and groove router bits, and for me, I prefer adjustable router bit sets. The set that I like the most, these are from Freud, and this is just the adjustable standard tongue and groove bit set. Very readily available, very reasonably priced. Why do I recommend adjustable bits as opposed to set bits? Well, because material thickness is always different. The reason why I like the adjustability of this router bit set so much is because it comes with the included spacers on the top that can be used to set the material thickness depending on what it is that you're using. We all know that plywood and different material thicknesses vary depending on where you're purchasing your material from. So having the adjustability to dial it in perfectly is really, really great, and they're very easy to adjust. Item number 3 is a good flush trim bit. If you're looking for a phenomenal flush trim bit, I would recommend one of these two. Each one's going to give you a little bit different capacity. Obviously, this one right here doesn't have as much of a cut capacity as this one does, but these are both white sides router bits, and they are from Bits and Bits Company, which is why you see they are darker here, because they have their proprietary Astra coating on them. This one is UDFT5152, and this one is UDC9112. This is the one that you always see people using, this big monster bit, just to give you an idea of how large it is. Both of these are spiral compression bits. These two bits here are going to give you way better results than something like this, which is a double fluted straight bit. This is not a flush trim bit, but you can get flush trim bits that are in this style. These are going to produce a much better cut, and actually are going to be quite a bit safer to use because of the geometry of the cutting. Jonathan Katz-Moses has an outstanding video where he shows extremely slow motion of these bits cutting. If you want to learn more about the benefits to having a compression bit like this, I'll definitely leave a link to his video. But it really, really shows very clearly the benefits to, investing wisely in a very good bit like one of these. To finish off the router bits, I'll show you my most used router bit, and that is this 1/8" roundover bit. This is also from Bits Bits. I believe you can get these all the way down to maybe a 1/16 of an inch. I'd have to look. And the smaller you go, the smaller the bearings that you can get to really get into, tight corners. For me, the benefit to this is it just gives that nice, subtle roundover on any of the edges on your materials. So if you don't want those super sharp edges, this is a great bit to use. The next item is lasers.
Frickin' laser beams!
Well, laser levels. I will tell you which ones I have. I have the Bosch Professional GLL40-20G, and I have the Bosch Professional GLL50-40G. Both of these lasers are green. I just like the green better. Imagine that. This one is primarily just a frontal and flank style laser, meaning nothing behind it is actually going to be illuminated, as where the reason I bought this one is because this one will be both frontal for the vertical beam, and it will actually be 360 degrees for the horizontal, which is really beneficial if you need to, get a perfect level around, say, 2 or 3 different walls. This will actually emit that laser all the way around at 360 degrees. It's how I hung up all my lumber racks. It's how I kept all of my lighting in my shop in a perfectly straight line. The laser level is, kind of a luxury item to have, I guess, for most people. But when you have one, you're going to find reasons to use it, and it's going to save you time, and that's what is really important. If you have one of the ETS 125 Festool sanders and you don't have this attachment, then you're completely missing out. I can sand edges very quickly, and I can round over corners if I want to. I can have the support, and if I wanted to do bevels, I could do that as well. However, the way that this works is I can put all of my pressure here on this pad, and I can easily sand the edges of a work surface, and I can do it all without me having to be worried that I'm going to, improperly balance the sander. At 99 bucks to add this attachment, which goes on very easily, simply one screw here and one screw right down there. You can take it off anytime you need to. It only takes a minute. Having the ability to edge sand and profile corners if I want to is very, very nice. The next item I actually have a dedicated video for, but I always get questions about it even though I already have a video on it, and that is the Jessam table saw stock guides. And basically what these are is an added safety feature. It's like adding a whole nother set of hands to your body because they really work well. And the way that they work is you basically just drop these down on the material, and that is now your reference. The wheels are actually off of it. You lock these down, and now I'm ready to make my cut. What's the benefit to this is that it's going to drastically reduce the possibility of kickback at the table saw. The other thing I want to point out as well, because the wheels are canted inward, as you push it through, it's drawing it into the fence. So even if you're off when you initially push it in, it will naturally guide that board back into the fence, keeping it up tight and stopping it from moving back. These are an amazing, amazing addition to add to a table saw. They are going to make the operation of using a table saw safer. They are very easy to use and get up and store out of the way. I cannot recommend these enough. If I was going to recommend any one thing that you should add to your table saw, if it's compatible with your table saw, is these stock guides. They also make them for the router table as well. While we're on the topic of safety at the table saw, I wanted to talk about another item. As you can see here, I have lots of different push sticks, push blocks. They all stay at my table, and I use different ones for different reasons. But let's take all of these away. But one that I really like a lot for not only the table saw, but also the jointer, also the bandsaw, the router table, is the gripper block. And there's a few things that I love about this. One, you can add auxiliary attachments to it. I love the angle of the handle. I love that it has this flat portion here that can reference up against the fence or be used in a vertical position, say if I'm going through the bandsaw. But I really love that it has these feet that drop out, because that can be that little added push that I need to get a board through something. Specifically, that comes in handy on the jointer. The other thing that I love about the gripper products is the material that they use on the bottom. I always find that I get way better grip, imagine that, with the products that they come out with than I do on some of these other products. So the micro jig gripper block, great for multiple tools, just all around great push block. The next item I want to talk about is the Woodpecker's clamp racket system. In my previous shop, I had a completely different setup in terms of clamp storage, which did work very nice, but it took up a very large footprint. The thing I want to point out here is this is 32 inches wide. I have over 50 clamps here. And of those 50 clamps, 18 of them are K-body clamps. You're able to get two different sizes. As you can see here, this is a very tall, does stick out a little bit further. Those are designed for this style of clamp. Then you have the smaller version, which can hold a variety of clamps, F-style clamps, uniclamps, trigger clamps. The big point that I want to make is that I'm able to now have a lot of clamps in a very, very small space. It's easy to install, and there are a variety of different sizes you can get. I have the 32, I think you can get a 24, I think you can get 12-inch add-ons. What's kind of genius about it is that the system is able to expand if you need it. But being able to have this many clamps in a very small space has really, really been a welcome addition in the new shop. Next two items are my air compressor and this switch. These are a result of questions that I had based on the last video where I was talking about the hose reel. So the first thing is I use a California Air Tools air compressor, and there's a very specific reason for that, and I'm going to show you here in just a moment. And to be clear, I know I will be asked, the one that I have is the 4610AC. But what this switch is this switch is my power source for the air compressor. So I don't have to bend over every time and turn this thing on. I can just walk over to the wall, I hit start, turns on my air compressor, and when I want to stop the air compressor, I hit the big, huge stop button. That's all this is. Multiple companies make them. I've used these on various tools. I've actually got one on my router table as well. What I want to show you real quick is why I chose the California Air Tools air compressor as opposed to some other brands that are out on the market. I previously had a Porter Cable pancake compressor. It was obscenely loud. I absolutely hated it, and I wanted to go with something a lot quieter. California Air Tools is known for much quieter air compressors. So I'm going to do a quick side-by-side comparison of the California Air Tools and also another recent purchase that I just made, which is the Roll Air Sustainer compressor, which is louder than my compressor that I have in the shop. What you're seeing on the left is the decibel reading of the California Air Tools air compressor, and what you're seeing on the right is actually the Roll Air Sustainer compressor. As you can see from this video, the California Air Tools air compressor is way quieter than even the small Sustainer air compressor. And I just want to highlight that both compressors are in the same location in the shop, and I'm recording the volume in the very center of my shop. Very first thing I want to talk about is the GRS16PE. Now, they do have two versions of this, and for those of you that don't know what this is a guide rail square. So the idea behind this is this attaches to your guide rail, and then you can utilize that to get a perfect 90-degree cut referencing off of this face or this face with the track running perpendicular. Now, this is the one that I've used for years. They have since released a version 2, which I have, and I'll talk about what the real difference is. But basically, this slides on to your guide rail from either the top or the bottom, and then it's going to clip in just like this. Now, from this point, I can slide this up and down on the actual guide rail, but if I want to take it off, I have to pull it off of the end. Now, with the version 2, they made one little modification, and it is right here, and they made it to where this has a lip, and that lip is able to be attached anywhere along the rail. So if you are using, say, clamps or something like that, you don't have to worry about sliding the clamp off to change this, because sometimes you have to change the orientation of the guide rail square, whether it be on the far side or the close side, depending on what side you want your offcut to be. And it is nice that you can slide it back and forth, but that simple little addition to the version 2 really made all the difference in the world. Next is what I believe to be the best product that they make, and the absolute best version of this that is available on the market, and that is the parallel guides. Now, I understand some of you may not know what parallel guides are used for. Now, these attach, just like the square, to your guide rail. And the whole purpose of these is that you have two of them, they have stops, and they have scales, and I can set these once they have been calibrated to whatever measurement I want. So in this case, let's just say 26. I can set this and this to 26, put the stops down, butt it up against my reference surface, and I can make cut after cut after cut without having to measure every time. So when it comes to repeatability, these are fantastic. If you're somebody that's breaking down a lot of plywood, these are an absolute must if you're doing that with your track saw. Now, I do have a video comparing these to other brands on the market. If you want to check that out, I'll put a video link down in the video description. I also have a video talking about the different guide rail squares, and I will leave that link down in the bottom as well. So what separates these from the other options on the market? To me, it's the stop. The stop that they use is the best design out of all of the other ones that I have tried. It's very easy to lock and unlock. The adjustability on it is phenomenal. You can really get it dialed in to exact perfection. And then the other thing that I like is that this has a spring-loaded knob to where if I was to turn it on its side like this, it's not locked down, but it's not going to fall off like some of the other options. Now, if you were to order a set of these, it's not as simple as just like going on the website, you say, give me this, and they send them to you, because there are different compatibility requirements, right, with the track that you're using, with the system that you're using, and really you get to configure your parallel guides to fit you exactly. So an example of that would be the type of attachment to the guide rail. There are different variations there. There are different lengths, being 20, 30, and 50. And there are combo packs that you can get. The very first one that I got was the 30-50. Then they released the 20-inch, and I decided to get some of those. Now, with that being said, one thing that I want to highlight is which ones I use and which ones I don't. And it's definitely the 30 and the 20, and if there's ever an instance that I can use the 20, I am using that. Why is there a difference between the two? Well, sometimes if I'm making a thin rip, I would much rather use a shorter rail than a longer one, because as you're making the cut, you have to kind of maneuver your way around it. It can get caught on the hose. But these are the two that I use the most. I can tell you, in all honesty, I have never used the 50-inch. I have yet to come into a situation where I feel like I needed those. The only thing that I can think of in my head is that you're trying to cross-cut a 4x8 sheet and you want to reference off the top or bottom of the plywood. So for me, I have never used those. They've always just been here in the event of a rainy day that maybe I need them, and I don't think that's going to happen. Again, I cannot stress enough, if you are looking for parallel guides, without question, these are the nicest ones that you can get for your money. The next thing is the Bigfoot. This is the version 2.0. I used to have the version 1, now I have the version 2, but basically what this is a support that gets attached to either your Domino 500 or the DF 700. You can apply it to either one exactly the same. To attach it, you simply place it on a flat surface, tighten down the knobs to the holes that correspond. And what this does is this gives me additional support if I am doing a vertical plunge. Now with the Domino 500, it's not really as challenging because it's a smaller machine, so manipulating it is a little bit easier. But when you're talking about the Domino 700, this I feel like is almost an absolute necessity. And I truly believe that this should come with the machine. And why is that? Because this is a big, heavy machine. And so when I'm making vertical plunges, the fact that I can place my hand right here and have all that additional support to make those plunges and ensure that this does not move. I use this every single time I am doing a vertical plunge with the 700. And I will pull it out for the Domino 500 from time to time, but it's, again, I believe it's a necessity for the 700. Now I have a couple different variations of the Festool ones, but I just want to put them side by side so you can see the significant difference between them. This is just going to give you a lot more reference surface and something to hold on to, quite frankly, to make sure that that machine does not rock. Because if it rocks, your stuff's not going to go in straight and it's going to cause all kinds of problems later. So absolute wonderful addition to a Domino. If you're somebody that's utilizing an MFT or an MFT style top that utilizes 20mm dog holes, the next thing is almost a necessity because the use cases for these are endless. These are some bench stops, right? These are the TDS 10s. This is the older version. And then these are the TDS 13s. Now, in practice, they are the exact same thing in the sense that they are here to provide a stop on my surface in the event that I'm, say, plunging the Domino into it or hand planing or anything that I want to create some sort of stop on the table to make whatever piece that I'm working on not slide around on the table. Now, the other thing that's great about it is you can set these up in 90-degree angles like you see here. And the other thing that's great is because they are adjustable, they can also be put on a 45-degree angle. So really, you can create fences, you can create stops, you can do so many things with them. And there are a couple differences between the two. This one, obviously, you can see that it has knobs that are above, and it's actually thicker than the TDS 13. It's also shorter than the TDS 13. Now, if I was using 3/4 inch material or more, this would be just fine. The knobs wouldn't get in the way. But what if I was using 1/2 inch material? Well, that's why they developed the TDS 13, because it is more low profile, and because they use this flush dog system, then there's nothing on the top, which means you can get away with thinner and thinner material and not have anything inhibiting it. Now, the other thing too is that because they made these longer, you have more reference surface for your material against it as opposed to something smaller or having to double these up. These have an endless amount of uses if you are utilizing this style of tables. So if you use bench dogs and you have an MFT style top, I would absolutely recommend picking up a set of these and just start using them and figuring out what the best use cases are. And I promise you that they'll make a massive difference in your shop. And finally, one of the tools I use more than anything for setup and guaranteeing accuracy, and that is the MTR. Now, this is an MTR 18. They also have the MTRX. I do have a video talking about the MTRX specifically and the use cases, but really the use cases are almost identical between the two. One is just a larger scale, and they might have a couple of different features, but I really, really like having this large triangle, because for someone like me that has an MFT style top, I utilize this every single time I set it up to guarantee and ensure that I'm going to be cutting at a perfect 90 by sliding it up against the fence, and I have this long reference surface here, and sliding it up against my guide rail because I have this long reference surface here. There are a bunch of different use cases for this: laying out angles, marking angles, cutting angles, attaching this to a guide rail square, utilizing the smaller version for setting up fences on smaller tools where you don't need as much registration. And another benefit is the ability to use these during a glue up to ensure during assembly you get a corner perfectly 90 degrees. This one is obviously too large to fit in a sustainer like the one that you see right here. It's really great that they made a smaller version of it, so that way it stores away with the triangle with all of the pieces. The exception to this is that you have this, and then you can get a sustainer that actually houses all of the components, because again, like I said, this is not just a triangle, right? This triangle does a lot of different things and can be really handy if you're somebody that utilizes an MFT style system.
If you frequently install Bloom undermount drawer slides, then I recommend looking at the Rockler Bloom undermount drawer slide jig. The kit comes with the jig as well as all of the bits that are needed to use with this jig. This makes the installation of these slides quick, easy, accurate, and repeatable. It will not only help you speed up the clip installation, but also drilling out the locator pin for the slides on the back of the drawer boxes, as there is no need for layout with this jig. Another helpful jig from Rockler are these hinge plate jigs, and they are sold in various configurations for different situations, and they're incredibly easy to use. And the way that they break them down is with different template names, and on their website they have a category for each hinge, and each hinge is assigned a template. You simply use the hairline cursor to align with the mark of where you want your plate to go, then use a self-centering drill bit to drill out your holes. These jigs are very accurate and easy to use. A track saw is an invaluable tool for many reasons, but it is great to have when it comes to cabinetry. Ripping full sheets of plywood can be a challenge depending on various factors such as type of table saw, space, and weight of the material. A track saw allows you to break down larger pieces into more manageable pieces. But it doesn't stop there. You could cut everything exactly the size you want it and never use the table saw at all. Unless you have the luxury of owning a huge sliding table saw, a track saw is a must in every shop. I personally recommend Festool for track saws. If you are not using a router system to bore your hinge cup locations, then I would strongly suggest investing in a good quality 35mm Forstner bit. I have tried various styles of bits, and they are not all created equal. Many that I have used tend to overheat and dull very quickly. For longevity and cut quality, I really like the FAMAG 35mm bit. I also like using this bit for the much smaller shavings that it produces, which is very different from other Forstner bits. It also allows for superior dust collection if you're using it for this purpose. For those of you applying edge banding by hand, I would encourage you to look at the Fastcap dual-sided edge banding trimmer. They can be very effective and speed up your trimming considerably, as it does cut both the top and bottom at the same time. Fastcap actually has a large variety of tools that can make edge banding faster and easier, and can be purchased as a complete set for those that are interested. Layout is a common and important part of cabinetry, and there are two layout tools that I use in every cabinet I build: the Pellini rule, specifically the 6-inch, and the Delve square, which is actually a fairly recent addition to my shop. The ruler is great for setback spacing and other small measurements, which are very common with cabinets, and the Delve square is fantastic for layout lines, for screw locations, due to the different incremental steps on the square. A pocket hole machine is a valuable tool for building cabinetry. It is a simple, quick, and repeatable way to assemble boxes of all sizes without having any visible fasteners. I have used both Craig setups like the Foreman as well as the Castle 110 pocket hole cutter. Regardless of what you use, pocket holes excel when assembling cabinets and drawer boxes. When it comes to installation of door and drawer hardware, the True Position jig is a lifesaver. It makes it very fast and repeatable by simply setting the jig to the desired size and pre-drilling all of the doors and drawers at the same time. There are other less expensive copies of this jig available, but I cannot speak to their quality as I have not used them personally. I have been using this for years, and I would break it out even if I only had one piece of hardware to install. It takes all the layout marking errors out of the equation and is almost dummy-proof, unless your name is Drew Witt. Spring clamps are a great thing to have on hand. Where I get the most use out of these is when I am adding stretchers to a cabinet, such as a bank of drawers. Instead of measuring and marking the layout over and over again, I like to cut spacers, and then I use the spring clamps to hold them in place. They are much smaller and easier to manage than other options and provide all the holding power that I need while securing the stretchers. If you are somebody that does a lot of edge banding or enough that you are sick and tired of ironing it on, then the Festool Conturo should absolutely be on your list. It is by far my favorite tool to use for the simple fact that it does exactly what it's designed to do, and it does it perfectly. While this is a very expensive option, it doesn't take up any space in your shop, and it makes the process far more enjoyable. All you do is use the Conturo to apply the banding, use the cutter to trim the ends, and then use the router to clean it up. I promise the time that this machine will save you will be worth the cost in one large cabinet job. Finally, what I consider to be the holy grail of cabinet construction, and that is the LR32 system from Festool. This is an expensive option, but it's an extremely accurate, all-inclusive option. It consists of the router, which can be the OF1010 or the OF1400, the LR32 kit, and the LR32 rail. This is my go-to system because I bore all of my holes at one time prior to assembly, making the assembly easy and accurate. I also use this system to pre-drill all of my drawer slide locations. This actually makes installing drawer slides a breeze. If you are serious about cabinet construction and you want a simpler way to batch out large jobs, this is definitely worth considering.